What's going on, everyone? Welcome into episode number 5 of the Vultures Row podcast. I'm your host, Joey Bonsanti, joined as always by my two wonderful co-hosts, Pat Winters and Tony Vegas. I'm going to start with Tony today. Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. We got, the owners meeting, this week. So we have a little bit of Jets news in action. Obviously it's a dead point in the off season. So any kind of Jets, nuggets that we can get, we'll take them, and excited to discuss them with you guys today.
And Pat, how we doing?
Doing great. Yeah. Owners meetings are here with the coaches and stuff. And I guess, it's kind of a breath of fresh air that we don't have as much news leaking from the management and organization that we're used to. So it's just something we have to get used to as fans. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Boring is good in that aspect. And I think it was kind of relayed today from what we heard from Muji. And but that being said, the draft is right. We're going to blink our eye on the draft's going to be here. So super excited about that.
Definitely. And I'll kind of give you guys a rundown of what we're going to be going through today. Had the Sports Business Journal about the Jets essentially not fully cleaning house, but offering the buyouts today. That came out. We'll touch on that. We'll obviously go through the pressers. We had Muji yesterday on Sunday, and then AG today, and then we'll finish with some seventh pick discourse there with offensive line versus tight end as Pat said, approach closer to the draft here and hone in on who we're really looking for here. So let's start off with that Sports Business Journal about the buyouts. I know, Pat, you had a lot to say, so I'll let you start, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, just so people understand what the situation is, right? They offered every non-contracted employee a buyout agreement, and it's basically motivated on culture change, not motivated on financials from what the reports came out. So they're basically telling everybody, look, there's going to be some drastic changes in here, and if you don't want to be a part of it, here's a buyout agreement or severance, for lack of a better word. So there's a couple ways to look at it. I'm personally not going to sit up here and necessarily bang on the table for 170 people to effectively lose their jobs. And again, I don't think it actually means that they're all going to get canned. They didn't have any, they said there's not going to be layoffs. They're just giving these employees the options to leave with a slotted severance based on tenure. But, there's a human element to this, right? People have careers, they have families, and working for the Jets in a 14-year playoff drought is pretty difficult when ultimately their jobs are tied to the product on the field, for which majority of these employees is outside of their control. So, for example, I know a lot of people in the season ticket department, right? Some of them I'm pretty close with. Do you think it's easy for those people in these last 14 years to sell this product, right? I mean, they send these emails out, and it's just a tough sell. You eventually run out of pitches after the longest playoff drought in all of sports. And the same thing goes on for social media and so on and so forth. So I understand the motive to a degree. They're trying to change the culture in any way they can without selling the team, right? Ultimately, they can try and do this and hope that they have a Lions type effect, which is, what the Lions did. But the first thing is, for whoever leaves, you're going to have to replace them with people who fit your mold. And that's not the easiest task. And on top of that, it has to work out. So maybe you have some less leaks in the building from this practice, which is probably what they're ultimately trying to gain in terms of their culture change. But the most important part here is, more often than not, and not just football, any business for that matter, it starts at the top. The culture of an organization will not drastically change until ownership does. Great example of that is Washington, right? Look at what's happened in just a short time of Dan Snyder not being the owner, right? So now in this case, it starts with the Johnson family, specifically Woody. Woody has stated that he has to be a better owner. He's not going to sell the team. So we all need to accept that as a fan base, right? So I try to look at the closest example, because we can't look at it from a Washington perspective, right? So the closest example, while it is in another sport, believe it or not, is right in our backyard, and it's actually the Knicks, right? So they are a very good model of foul here, because they were the absolute worst for a long time. And I'd even argue they were worse than the Jets from a losing and ownership standpoint, right? Dolan finally, after years, took a step back. He hired the right people in Leon Rose and Worldwide Wes. And guess what? He still owns the team. The ship has been righted. They've had consecutive playoff appearances now. And you don't really hear a whole lot anymore about James Dolan's ownership crap anymore, right? I mean, there really isn't a lot of, there's really nothing anymore. So my point being is that winning fixes a lot of these things. Woody, I do believe in his core, wants to win, and he will do what it takes to win. But culture ultimately starts with him, not these 170 people who had a really tough job for over a decade. So I just hope that he looks at this and takes a step back. That's if he's not going to sell the team, which he obviously isn't, then take a step back and see what happens. And, again, I feel for those people because, again, I guess it is a classy way to do it. If, they're not firing them, but they're kind of telling them like, look, like, we want you out of here. So I guess it's the easiest way it's the softest landing, but I just think that, again, take a step back, Woody. I really hope let's see what he does.
Tone, what do you think on it?
I think Pat really laid that out pretty well. Obviously, there's a human aspect to this, and I get it. They didn't get laid off, but they are essentially being shown the door, if not now, then at some point, because it seems as though they want to overhaul the entire organization. And Pat's point where it starts at the top is exactly right. I truly do believe that Woody Johnson wants really badly for the Jets to be a competent organization, and he just doesn't know how to get out of his own way. Hopefully, he's been saying all the right things. Over the offseason, he said today he was going to talk to the players about that bogus in terms of ownership. Every time the guy steps in the media, it's honestly hilarious. It's some sort of quote that gets through the cycle. But I don't hate, cleaning out the organization of people that almost expect to lose. And I get it. These people probably don't have a lot to do with the on-field actual product. But at a certain point, you have an organization that has failed for the past decade plus, and they're making major, major changes to overhaul the entire organization. And like I said, the human aspect is tough, but for me as a fan of the team, all I want to do is see them win. And I don't think that getting rid of people that expect a losing product is necessarily a bad thing. But it's gonna take some like major changes out of ownership. It sounds like they learned their lesson, and I truly do believe that Aaron Glenn's the type of personality that's gonna give Woody Johnson that pushback that he's needed for so long, because we've just had soft coach after crazy eyed Gase after soft coach. So everything that I've seen out of Aaron Glenn, Muji to a lesser extent, he seems like a piece of bread, honestly, in the media. But I mean, these media guys are scared to talk to Aaron Glenn. He's an intimidating guy. He's all business, and this move kind of goes with with everything that they've been preaching, trying to get rid of that losing culture. So, it's something that I've been calling for, this offseason, clean out everybody and see what you can do with a fresh slate. And they're doing just that. So it's not like, I definitely wasn't against this.
And
I get that major overhaul changes need to be made, right? So, like, I'm not saying I hate it. I understand why they're doing it. I just think that, gutting these departments per se,
Yeah.
isn't, it's not just like, it's not just like Thanos, let's snap a finger and, it's all going to be better, right? So, it's to your point, it's going to take time, and it's not like they're going to replace these people like with all-stars right away, like, so.
And 160 people aren't leaving, by the way. That's not going to happen, right? They're not all accepting this buyout.
If they all do, then it really, or like, let's just say like 75% of the 100,
it's
people,
scary.
then it really tells you like the ownership stuff is real. So, and then from there, who's going to want to work for them? Because the owner's still there, right? So there's a lot of layers to that I think not everybody, it's not, like I said, it's not just like you're going to snap your fingers and it's going to be better. So
I thought they would do something like this. I just didn't think it would be to this level per se. And I know that they're not just going out and laying off 200 people, but when you offer something like a buyout of this magnitude to this many people, it does speak volumes to what they're like the precedent they're trying to set in this organization moving forward. I guess I was just a little taken back by, like you guys said, the human element, sales ticket reps, stuff like that. Like, I don't necessarily think it needed to go that far, but again, I guess we'll have to see how many employees end up actually accepting the buyout. And I don't even know if that'll be made public, but
One more thing. It's a tough day to be an internet source. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
yeah, all the they're literally taking away maybe some of the reason that you exist. But
Maybe.
um, yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up there. I don't think many people will talk about this today, so I thought it would be, and Pat too really pushed for us to talk about this, and I think it's a good topic to keep up with. But let's move on to a lot of what the internet has been talking about. The Muji presser yesterday, the AG presser today. I have a bunch of quotes written down that I kind of want to run through, but I could pass it to you, Tony, first. What was your like overall takeaway from Muji? And I guess more Glenn, obviously you already said that Muji is a piece of bread. So go ahead.
Being a piece of bread isn't a bad thing. I don't mind that at all for the record. I'm just going to say, one thing that really stuck out to me, and this kind of like rubbed people the wrong way for some reason, is the fact that they like instantly named Justin Fields the starter. And we have a lot of these like Bill Parcells comparisons to Aaron Glenn. And I do think like he definitely has that influence pretty heavily. I mean, he didn't commit to like Breece Hall being like the lead back. It was more kind of like this is going to be like a committee running back room. But they committed to Justin Fields as QB1 right out of the gate. And I'm sitting here like, okay, I don't even think they had to say that, but they paid the guy $40 million over 2 years. But there's some people out there that are saying, oh, I don't know, like, Tyrod, you don't just like hand the starting job out. It's not very Bill Parcells like. I don't mind that at all, especially for a player like Justin Fields that is coming here to revitalize his career, essentially. He's still a young guy. I mean, like, these quarterbacks need confidence. And once they get that going, that's when you see them build momentum, stack good games together. And for them to commit to Justin Fields, I thought it's a no-brainer. I mean, the money talks. It's all about the money. And they decided to hand Justin Fields a decent-sized contract in terms of just, NFL cap space. It's not a huge quarterback contract, but I was a fan of that. Pat, I'll let you touch on a few of the other main talking points that they had, but overall, it was just very like you got to earn your spot. Outside of Justin Fields, it was like you got to earn your spot. He didn't refer to anybody as like this amazing, great like play. He kind of describes everybody as a piece to the puzzle of the team, and it's like, okay, yeah, Garrett Wilson, he's good. Sauce Gardner, he's good. We'll discuss that when we get there. So I really, really do like that mentality. I hate organizations that, and the Jets are very guilty of this. They hand things to these players and they're setting that precedent of you got to come in here and you got to freaking earn it. Right. So I love everything that Aaron Glenn says. I mean, it's actually very, very refreshing to see a guy that's probably not just going to come in and preach accountability and say, oh, we're going to hold, all this stuff. It really, truly does seem like he's got a little bite to his bark there. So I really liked everything that they were saying. It's just, it's a matter of if, can they win games on the actual football field?
Yeah, touching on Fields a little bit, I agree with you. I mean, I said it from the beginning, right? If you're going to commit to this guy, if you're going to make this move, you need to fully commit to him, like 100% to him. And that's what they seem to be doing. And giving him that public vote of confidence it's what he needs. It's what Tanner Engstrand needs, right? Because now instead of having an open quarterback competition and building an offense and saying, all right, who fits into it best? It's now we're going to run. Now I know that, not that he didn't know before, but he's going to build this offense around Justin Fields, right? It's also what the team needs. They need to know that this is their guy, right? So I agree with you. Let's not give this BS. This is an open competition shtick. I like that they said Tyrod's on his heels. That's fine. Yeah. But these small things add up to me, so I'm just happy to see that from that regard. In terms of Muji, I think it's, again, he didn't really have any huge quotes other than Elijah Vera Tucker, he committed to him at guard, which, great. but now I'm really scared about right tackle. But taking that aside, I think it's a breath of fresh air to see a tight-lipped organization for the first time in a while. And while we're not used to it, like I said, boring is good in this case with Muji, not just with his PC answers the past few days, but just really how they've been really running things the past month, like little to no news coming out of the building, right? And in terms of Aaron Glenn, again, you have a breath of fresh air that you have a real disciplinarian coach who my whole takeaway based on his comments and their moves in free agency is that Aaron Glenn is really betting on himself as a coach to maximize the talent that he has. I was always a fan of his. He was my first choice to be head coach of this team. But when you hear things such as we're going to build the offense around our personnel, not, the other way around, because that's how it's always been for the Jets. And so, he said a quote where I want our third rounders to play like first rounders, and I want our first rounders to have gold jackets one day. That's him stating that he's going to coach the shit out of this team. He's really banking on himself, and he's really putting that confidence out there that I am going to bring the most out of every player on the roster that I have, right? He kind of like alluded to that with Stevens too. And he said a lot of things where it was like, I just don't really care about last year. Like, I'm coming in here, I'm going to coach the absolute shit out of this team. Watch what I do, right? Now, go actually do it, right? But again, until he gives me a reason to think otherwise, I'm going to believe in him. So, and again, I do like the attitude he's giving the media. Like, do I think he needs to like beat the shit out of Samini the way he's been doing it? No, I don't know why he's doing that, but like he really burned him on the Tanner Eggstrand comment, and do I think he needs to just be blitzing him like that? No, but I do like the tone setting that like this isn't gonna be the way. He's really trying to. And it goes back to like the report before and all that stuff. They were really trying to make serious changes of just how they operate things. And you could feel it. You could see it in the way Aaron Glenn talks. You could see it in the way Muji talks. You could see it in the things that are coming out, the things that aren't coming out. So I think it's just they're playing brick by brick. And and again, another positive brick to me. It's something that's not really at the grand scheme of things a really big deal in the owners' meetings. Like, who cares? But it's a positive brick for me.
Yeah, like Tony said too about, giving my 2 cents on the Fields thing. Once they gave him 30 million, guaranteed, that was them saying he's the starter. I don't think that you needed Darren Muji to come out or Aaron Glenn to come out and say that he's the starting quarterback for the New York Jets. Once they paid him 30 million, he was the starter. One of my favorite quotes of the day from AG was Aaron Glenn on Garrett Wilson being unhappy last year. He said, "I wasn't here last year and I don't care what happened last year."
Right.
Like that encapsulates the type of coach that he is. He said, "We're in the now. Like, we're not dealing with if Garrett Wilson was happy or not last year." He's like, "I wasn't here last year. I'm here now. I'm going to coach the shit out of this team. I'm going to coach Garrett Wilson. I'm going to coach Sauce Gardner." Going back to the Brandon Stevens thing too, and I was thinking about it more today about just him coaching some of these players. Thinking about why Brandon Stevens was, why was he one of the first guys that we signed? Why was he the one that got that kind of contract? And it's because of how much he is betting on himself to coach these players, as you said, Pat. I really feel like that was an amazing point, because I think he's putting a lot of stock in some of these lower contracts just to show that he could coach some. Like, maybe a Stone Smart turns into someone who produces for this team. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, he said it to a degree with Andre Sisco. He was like, "Look, I don't know what happened in Jacksonville last year, but I know what the type of player that guy is, and I want that type of guy on my team." And he said it like with Sherwood too. He had to kind of had a little bark in that comment. They're like, "Do you think he was a good fit?" He's like, "I wouldn't have signed him if I thought he wasn't a good fit." Yeah. And he like had to repeat it. And he's like, "It's that simple, man." Like, it's so
he's truly no bullshit. It's actually awesome, dude. It's refreshing. And this last regime was full of bullshit. Like the mottos, the all gas, no break. It almost set them. They set themselves up to almost be like a meme when it failed. And man, it truly seems like they hired a real adult to be the head man of this organization. And like I said, this all doesn't mean shit until we see progress on the field. But to just it doesn't feel like a circus right now. And again, when the bullets start flying and if they start losing games, then we're going to really see who these guys are. This obviously doesn't mean anything. They're 0-0 right now. This is what their record is. But everything, it gets me like fired up, and I haven't like had this feeling. It's I don't know if it's the nostalgia of Aaron Glenn being a Jet, when in his playing days, or I don't know what it's his old school mentality. I don't know what it is, but right now it has me pretty fired up about the direction that he's going to lead them.
Well, a good point too is I think that, and no disrespect to the beat whatsoever, it's just the beat's gotten their way on a lot of the old management and the coaches and, and the New York media and all that. And Aaron Glenn is not afraid of that. And I think that was a really big selling point as to why a lot of people wanted him as the coach, because he's been here before. Now, I know it was in, 94 to like 2001 or whatever it was, right? But he was a Jet for a long time, and Rich Samiti was on the beat back then, right? Like, so, he has experience here. He knows how to handle it, and I think that party's not shying away from it. So it's encouraging, nonetheless.
And ever since Rex left, the beat's been licking their chops. Like, I mean, you think of the coaches that they've had, like you just said, Bowles, Gase, Salah. Yeah. These guys you could step right over them in the media. So
even Rex towards the end was getting pretty chewed up. He had that presser where he was like looking sideways and looking. He's like, "We're not." I don't remember the exact context of it, but he had I think it was about the quarterbacks, of course, but it has a tendency to happen. Now, again, Tony brought up a great point. Let's see what happens when they're 2-6. I hope not, but when they're 2-6, how's it going to sound, right? So, it will be interesting. But again, positive bricks in the foundation right now.
And just some other quotes that I thought were notable before we move on here. I liked when Glenn said about the quiet offseason. You don't win in the offseason, which is something that we're not used to as fans.
Opposite of what we've done. Yep.
Exactly. And then touching on what Tony said earlier about the running backs, like, we're going to utilize those guys. If we can get all of them on the field at one time, we'll do that. And then same thing with Justin Fields, with, like, he's the starter, but that's in pencil. He's not giving anyone anything. Yeah. Even if Justin Fields got $30 million guaranteed, I think that's him saying, you know what, if he starts playing like shit over a 4-game stretch, his job is he's not the starter for all 16 games or 17 games. So I think, like you said, Tony, like, he's a no bullshit guy. He's going to come in here and he's not going to take anything from anyone. Let's just hope that he's as good at coaching as he is at dealing with the media and at pressers, because if that's the case, we're going to be in really good hands.
Agreed.
There's really, I mean, are there any other quotes that you guys want to touch on before we talk about that number 7 pick, or we feel comfortable moving on here?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, to wrap it up here, let's talk about, every single week, I feel like we're honing in on this number 7 pick and getting a bit more of a clear picture on what direction we're going to go in. I think at this point, can we all agree that we think it's either going to be one of a tight end or offensive line, unless there's some sort of trade up package?
Yeah, it definitely, based off of their comments today, and I don't know how much they're probably their comments probably don't mean a lot because they don't want to project what they're doing. Obviously, you never want to show your cards in terms of the NFL draft. But okay, AVT is confirmed the guard. They wouldn't just say that if they're that's not a smoke screen, right? So currently, a core four, Chugs, whatever you want to call him, is the starting right tackle. And tight end, we have, I get, he said some nice things about Jeremy Ruckert and Stone Smart. These are tight end 2/tight end 3 guys. So, and obviously we don't have any pass catchers outside of, Garrett Wilson. And I get it. Josh Reynolds, Tyler Johnson, these guys are like decent, like rosterable receivers, but you don't want them as your wide receiver too. Alan Lazard, whatever you want to make of that situation. So obviously 2 biggest pressing needs remains. It's pass catcher and right tackle as of right now. I'm still leaning that they're just going to take right tackle. This whole regime screams old school to me. They're going to want to run the shit out of the football, like we've said so many times. And that starts up front. That happened in Detroit. They had a fantastic offensive line. And they don't care that the Jets drafted Mekhi Becton, AVT, Olu Fashionett, because that wasn't them, right? These are just guys that are on the roster now. They have 4 solid starting linemen, but it wasn't them that spent this amount of, draft capital on the offensive line. So I don't think that's taken into any account. And I see a lot of fans talking about that as well. It's like, okay, well, these guys didn't do that. So just because the other guys sucked at their job doesn't mean that it's going to, preclude them from doing anything in the offseason that probably will make the team better. So My preference and my opinion as to what they're going to do. If Armand Membu is there, I think that's going to be the pick at 7. And if he's not, I think they will go tight end and pick an old school tight end like Tyler Warren that can block. He's a good, pass catcher, and he could be that number 2 option behind Garrett Wilson. Um, I feel like I've said this a million times, but I really truly do. As of right now, I feel like it's one of those 2 guys with like an outside chance of like, I don't know, like a linebacker or something like that. If they go like complete wild card, maybe they go there. But as of right now, I think that's the direction they're going to go.
So I think it's one of 4 people. I think it's one of Mason Graham, Tet, Warren, and Membu, right? So I'm going to rule out Tet and Mason Graham because I don't think Mason Graham is going to be there, and I think it's going to ultimately come down to Membu versus Warren, right? Which is an extremely difficult debate because they're both pressing needs for the Jets, especially with the news that AVT is going to play guard, and they desperately need a pass catcher, right? And they desperately need a right tackle. So I've been thinking about this all day. As many Jet fans are thinking about this all the time too, because it really feels like it's going to be between these 2 guys if they're both there, right? So I looked at the big boards of every draft expert today. Daniel Jeremiah has Tyler Warren ranked 5th. He has Membu ranked 11th. Mel Kiper has Tyler Warren ranked 7th. He has Membu ranked 11th. Todd McShay has Tyler Warren ranked 5th. He has Membu ranked 10th. Connor Rogers has Tyler Warren ranked 6th and Membu ranked 9th. So, the argument for Tyler Warren is in a draft where many experts are calling it thin, a draft where they say there are 5 to 7 really good prospects, and then you're getting a similar talent between 8 and 35, let's say, right? The drop-off isn't, there's a drop-off, right? On a pick that you absolutely can't miss on, you have to get 7 right? You just take the blue chip prospect as the experts would rank, right? Because based on how they're saying it, Membu would be in that latter category, right? So you take the blue chip prospect as the experts would rank him at a dire position need nonetheless, pass catcher. And I talked about on our last pod how much I love Warren, so I'm not really going to gush about him again. But in that mock we did, Membu was gone, which is why I took him, right? So here's where I think the difference comes into play with this whole conversation, and it's not necessarily between these 2 guys, it's just the positional value and the depth at the positions in the draft leads me to think that the chances of a good tight end being on the board at 42 is better than a good tackle being at the board at 42. So, for example, Daniel Jeremiah has, in his top 50, he's got 4 tight ends and he's got 6 tackles. So you would think that most of the tackles are gone simply because of supply and demand of good starting linemen in the NFL. So looking at the tight ends, he had Tyler Warren, who will obviously be gone. He had Colston Loveland, who will most likely be gone at 42. He's a first-round lock. But then from there, there's a solid chance of both, one of, if not both, Elijah Arroyo from Miami and Mason Taylor from LSU being there at 42. I love Elijah Arroyo personally more than Mason Taylor. I think he's a legit elite tight end prospect. He's especially as a receiver. He's like a total matchup nightmare. It just comes down to his durability for him. He's had some nasty knee injuries, and the medicals have to check out. So my point being is that I'm not going to be mad either way at 7. If it is truly Membu versus Warren and they're both there, which is not totally locked in because there's a very good chance Membu's gone. But let's just say it is for this scenario. I'm just more scared of the hole at right tackle right now than I am at pass catcher, as crazy as that sounds. And I just love the idea of Olu and Membu locking down the perimeter of tackle positions for the foreseeable future and really putting this offensive line conversation to bed finally. Like years and years of talking about it. Joe Douglas, it was just his life mission the whole time. We've had offensive line issues for years, really just putting it to bed now with 4 really blue chip guys, or foundational pieces in AVT, in Titman, Membu, and Olu, right? Simpson's great too, but again. And then from there you can address pass catcher in round 2, whether that's receiver, whether that's tight end. It's a deep tight end class. And then again, there's going to be post free agency moves too. So I'm still in the camp of right tackle just based on positional value rather than, I know Tyler Warren's an elite prospect, so I'm not going to be mad. To me, I'm more scared of right tackle at the moment than I am of pass catcher. And
It's
I can see
funny.
why somebody else would think the total opposite. I just don't think that you could go one way or the other with this, and I could totally see both perspectives.
You had me locked in there, Pat. That was actually a really good
Hell
job.
yeah.
Because I found myself kind of zoning out and listening to you like I was listening to a different podcast, which is hilarious. So very good job there.
Thanks.
In terms of this number 7 pick and from a fan perspective, it feels like tug of war every week. I'm changing my mind on this. And I truly feel like if you asked me today, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think if I had the choice between the two, I think I actually would take Warren. And I think I'm not saying just it's a straight up kill two birds with one stone. You're getting an offensive lineman in Tyler Warren, but you are getting a really good blocker. You're getting a good playmaker. And I keep thinking, I don't know why it keeps coming up in my head, but I keep thinking about Aaron Glenn, thinking about like a Laporta. And I keep thinking about people saying that Tyler Warren is a better prospect than what Laporta was coming out of college. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Again, I'm not like this mock draft guru that I could think that could be up for debate. But
I would
just
say he
thinking,
definitely is. Just I mean, it's easy to say Laporta now, but Laporta wasn't a first round pick. So
yeah,
sure.
Sure.
Just leaving it simply at that, right?
And I feel like the thing that I get scared about with taking Warren at 7 is I feel like even though they did come out today or yesterday and say, Elijah Vera Tucker's a guard, plans change. You don't know how the board's going to fall. You don't know about they could end up taking someone later on and kicking AVT out to tackle. You have no idea what's going to happen on this board. So that's why if I had to make the decision today, I know I just said Warren, but man, Membu is a really safe pick to solidify that offensive line.
Did you just change your mind mid?
I just did a live tug of war. That's what I just did. I just changed my mind.
That's
Again,
amazing.
it's legitimate though, because
It's hard.
It's legitimate because I do love the idea of having a weapon in Tyler Warren like that. He'll instantly be the fan favorite on the team. He will instantly be in the Garrett Wilson sauce core of favorite players on the team. And when you watch the guy play, I can't blame him. He is an absolute beast. He doesn't go down. He plays every part of the position well. He's an animal. I just think that there are a lot of really good tight ends in this class.
And I said it 2 episodes ago. Or maybe it was last episode, about how teams are consistently finding starting caliber offensive linemen. Whether I know it's mostly guards, but you should be able to find starting caliber offensive linemen past the second round. So that's another argument for the Warren side is, can we pick up a Warren and maybe find a guy in the 3rd round who could start? I don't know.
If they came out and said that AVT is going to be, it's a fluid situation in terms of where he's going to play, I could totally see them trying to get a guard. And that would be a lot better. And that could still happen, 100%.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a right tackle, then, it's going to be harder to find a mid-round prospect just playing the odds.
The last point I want to make, and somebody said this, it was a really good quote. I liked how it was put. Eat your vegetables now when they're in front of you, because next year the sweets are going to be a lot sweeter than they are this year. I truly do think that. I think this is a weak draft class, and if you have a college right tackle, your hole's at right tackle. It's not a left tackle. You don't want to draft a left tackle. Membu is a right tackle. He'd fill an instant need. You're not moving him around. Like he's your bona fide right tackle. That's what he played in college. So if he's sitting there right in front of you, you take him. You take some swings in the 2nd, 3rd round on guys like, God willing, Jaden Higgins is there, like something like that. You get some more pass catchers. And then next year, you can kind of focus on those skill positions when the fruit probably will be a little bit more ripe in terms of talent. That's what I would lean. That's it. Like I just think you got to take your medicine this year one last time. I'm always for taking offensive linemen 1st round. By the way, this is not a new take for me. But the next draft class is going to be a lot better for weapons. And if they're playing the long game, I would eat your vegetables, have fun later.
Love that quote. We could talk about the 7th pick for probably another 2 hours, but I'm going to cut it there. I think that was a really good layout of what we're going to talk about in the next few weeks. Again, if you haven't yet, follow us on Twitter at NYJ_Vultures Row. on the YouTube, on the Patreon. And then I'll leave it to you guys for any closing thoughts, any last words before I sign off here. Anything? Nothing?
Very excited. Listen, I feel like we're going to have this tug of war for the next 3 weeks probably, but barring, a surprise rise in a prospect or something. But other than that, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And my favorite day of the year is the Saturday of rounds 4 through 7. Sit down at a bar, you have some beers with your buddies, and you watch the Jets draft players you've probably never heard of. So every day we're closer to that, I get pretty juiced up, and it's approaching fast. So we're going to be here for it.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in once again. We will see you next week. And as always, go Jets.